This is Covering the Spread, part of the FanDuel Podcast Network.
Thanksgiving week is always a really fun one across the NFL, thanks to the 3-game Thanksgiving slate. But this year, it's actually extra fun because we get to kick things off with a really fun Monday Night Football game. It is the Harbaugh Bowl, John versus Jim out in Los Angeles. It is the Ravens against the Chargers today. We're going to break down how I expect that game to play out, my read of the spread and the total. We'll talk about some player props I like, some alt markets I'm eyeing for tonight, and an SGP I like for tonight over at FanDuel Sportsbook. Welcome on into Covering the Spread. That's right here on the FanDuel podcast, or on FanDuel Research and the FanDuel YouTube page as well. My name is JimSannes. I am a managing editor for FanDuel Research, here to break down this very fun game between the Ravens and the Chargers. Letting you know my top bets at FanDuel Sportsbook for today. We're going to dive into that here in just one second. But first, wanted to run through our podcast schedule for this week because it is going to be an interesting one with the Thanksgiving slate coming out. Tomorrow, we'll be back again live, 10 a.m. Eastern, breaking down my best bets and player props for the Thanksgiving slate. If player props are up by then, we'll talk about them, but primarily going to break down my thoughts on the spread and totals there, which bets stand out to me. 3 p.m. Eastern, we're going to have our Thanksgiving DFS show. We'll break down who we're eyeing there on the 3-game NFL DFS slate. And then 10 a.m. on Wednesday, I'll go through other games across NFL Week 13, my prediction of the spread and totals, which bets I like there. And then 2 p.m. Eastern on Wednesday is our main slate NFL DFS show. So again, 10 a.m. the betting shows tomorrow and Wednesday. 2 p.m. or 3 p.m. on Tuesday is the Thanksgiving DFS show. 2 p.m. on Wednesday is our main slate show. So if you want to get those as they're going live, just subscribe to the brand new FanDuel Football Betting YouTube page. Subscribe there, turn on notifications, leave us a thumbs up. We appreciate those of you who have done so already as always. And of course, subscribe to the FanDuel, the Covering the Spread podcast feed, wherever you get your podcasts, and also check out the FanDuel Research podcast feed to get those DFS shows as well. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more at FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Must be 21 plus and present in select states. For Kansas, in affiliation with Kansas Star Casino, or 18 plus and present in DC. First online real money wager only. $5 first deposit required. Bonus issued as non-withdrawable bonus bets, which expire 7 days after receipt. Restrictions apply. See terms at sportsbook.fanduel.com. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit fanduel.com/RG. Call 1-888-79-7777 or visit ccpg.org/Chat Connecticut. Visit mdgamblinghelp.org in Maryland. Hope is here. Visit gamblinghelplinema.org or call 800-327-5050 for 24/7 support in Massachusetts, or call 1-877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY in New York. Let's take a look here at the betting odds at FanDuel Sportsbook for this game between the Ravens and the Chargers right now. Ravens favored by 2.5. It's a juicy 2.5. They're -118 there right now. Total in this game is 50.5. And when I look at this game, I do want to bet on the Ravens at -2.5, -118. You can lay the full 3 if you want to, get a bit less juice in there, but then push on 3. But overall, I want to buy into the Ravens for tonight. They entered week 12 averaging 0.41 passing net expected points per dropback. And that is numberFire's EPA metric. Usually like an MVP type season is going to get you like 0.30 or so. Lamar's at 0.41 this year. The Lions are second at 0.36, and nobody else was above 0.25. So the Ravens have been absurd so far this year. Now the Chargers are good too. They seem to be on the ascent, and their defense is playing better than the Ravens is right now, given how poor the Ravens have been against the pass. But I kind of just want to bet on Lamar Jackson. I've got the Ravens there by about 5 here right now, and I do agree with the model on this one that the Ravens are an elite tier NFL team. Chargers are very good, but don't get a huge home field advantage here with this game being in LA. Don't tend to have a lot of home field advantage anyway. So I'm going to ride with the Ravens here, bet Lamar Jackson, and lay the 2.5 at -118 here. I also do have some value in the money lines. That is currently -146 if you want to go with a bit more forgiving market. If you're building out a same game parlay or anything like that, you can instead go with the money line if you want. -146, also a value for me. Total right now, FanDuel Sportsbook, 50.5. Over is -110. I've got this at 51.7. I'm going to stay away from that one because I'll just stick with the Ravens spread here. But I do think that there is enough juice in the over. It's a good enough game to me where I can feel okay looking at some overs when I'm looking at player props, because I typically want to see value in the over, see a lot of points. I'm going to take over in player props because that does kind of have a cascading effect across the entirety of the player prop market. There's enough there where I can feel okay going towards overs. With that said, the first prop we're going to discuss for tonight is actually going to be an under. There's a couple reasons why I want to go here. That's for J.K. Dobbins. Dobbins' baseline rushing prop is 47.5. I want to go towards his rushing plus receiving number. That is 65.5. His under is -114. And to me, that does stand out as being a value. Primarily because Gus Edwards came back, and in the games with Gus Edwards back in the fold, Dobbins' role has decreased. And this is kind of what's happening even before Edwards came back, because Dobbins, it seemed like, I'm not sure if he was like wearing down, which would make sense given all the injuries that he's had and stuff like that. But like, it did seem like he was wearing down a bit even before Edwards returned. In the two games with Gus Edwards back, Dobbins has 50 and 56 yards in scrimmage. And that 56 yards last week was even with a long touchdown run late in that game. So in general, I'm pretty skeptical of Dobbins right now, and I want to find a route to betting against him. I think this is a better route for doing so than the rushing yardage mark. Now, we'll talk about the Ravens against the rush later on and why that could lead us elsewhere in some props. But I think that the receiving part here is actually important because Dobbins is really not getting a lot of work in the passing game. He's had only a couple targets the past couple of games with Edwards back in the fold. So I just want to overall fade his role. And I think this is the best route for doing so, is taking the under 65.5 rushing plus receiving yards for J.K. Dobbins for tonight. Now, I know that unders are not as fun. So let's talk about an over I do like. Let's talk about an alt over. I think in this game, we can actually ride the lightning and bet on Derrick Henry to do some really fun stuff for tonight. Henry's baseline prop at FanDuel Sportsbook, 84.5 rushing yards. That's fine. But Henry is really, truly like the alt rushing yard king because of how good he is at breaking off these really long runs. You can see at FanDuel Sportsbook, he is plus 158 to get you 100 plus yards for tonight. Henry has done that in 5 out of 11 games so far this year, gotten to the century mark just on the ground. The Chargers a bit better against the pass than they are against the rush. They're 7th against the pass based on number fire schedule adjusted metrics versus 12th against the rush. Should be a pretty tight game script. We tend to see Henry at his highest usage in these tighter game scripts. And it's a really important game for the Ravens because the Steelers lost Thursday, so they can make up some ground in the AFC North and already have lost that one game to the Steelers already this year. So it's an important game, tight game script, decent matchup on the ground for Henry. That all adds up to me wanting to buy into him, and 100 plus yards at plus 158. That's a pretty fun mark for a guy who can get there effectively in just a couple of runs. I also would say if you want to dig a bit higher for Henry, I'm not going to blame you. He is 15-1 to get 175 plus yards. Like, that's pretty insane. He's had 150 plus yards 3 times already so far this year. He is plus 830 to get there. You could do worse. That's some true alt markets on Derrick Henry, but I'm a coward. So I'll go with the 100 plus yards instead, plus 158. But I would say at least give some consideration to some higher end numbers for Derrick Henry. For someone who does like these ladder bets where you put a little bit on different areas, different thresholds for a player, Derrick Henry to me is the prime guy to consider for that for tonight. Mentioned before that the Ravens are very good against the rush. I think that could allow us to buy in to Justin Herbert for tonight. Justin Herbert's baseline passing yardage prop at FanDuel Sportsbook is 261.5. And I really do like the over on that number for a couple of reasons. First one is that He's gone over this number in 4 of the past 6 games, and that's not cherry picking because to me, that's what they've done since their bye week, where the offensive line has been healthy, both tackles have been back out there. The pass rate with the offensive line being healthy has increased, and they have Quentin Johnston back in the fold. So in their most relevant sample, Herbert has gone over this number at a pretty impressive clip. Now he's facing the Ravens, who rank 2nd against the rush, but 27th against the pass. So they funnel work towards the pass, and Herbert has been passing the ball quite a bit anyway. And I think it all lines up pretty well for him to be able to be efficient through the air. So a convergence of a couple things here leading to the Herbert over. He is throwing the ball effectively. The Chargers are letting him let it rip more as a result of that. But also, it's a matchup that pushes him to throw the ball a bit more because the Ravens are so good against the rush. So it's a good setup for Herbert. I don't hate the all markets for Herbert either. If you want to go with those with the Henry ones as well, but over 261.5, currently at -113. My preferred route for buying into Justin Herbert for this Monday Night Football game. So again, Herbert over 261.5 is -113. All markets for Herbert, again, couldn't quite talk myself into those, but to get 275.5 or 275 plus 126, he's plus 225 to get 300 plus. Again, that's why I wanted to go with the baseline market. You're not getting a ton extra for going a bit more aggressive, but I do think that Herbert is a very fun guy to buy into for tonight's game. Let's finish things up here by talking about a same game parlay I like for tonight's game. And it's going to revolve around the 2 running backs in the game script I discussed. If we get this scenario where the Ravens do build a lead in this game and cover the 2.5, that's going to be it for our Derrick Henry mark. So what do you want to go with the Ravens -2.5 and add in the Derrick Henry alt rushing yard number? Again, 100 plus rushing yards for Henry is plus 158. So add that on to the Ravens -2.5. And if they do build the lead, that's going to be not a great setup for J.K. Dobbins. Maybe he gets more work in the passing game in that scenario because he'd probably be more involved there than Gus Edwards would be, but still want to take him under now 66.5 rushing plus receiving yards and -115 as the third leg of our same game parlay. There is a 30% live profit boost on live bets for tonight, but we'll go with the same game parlay here. Again, you could go with the Ravens money line as well if you prefer that, but a 3-leg same game parlay, the Ravens -2.5, Derrick Henry 100 plus rushing yards, and J.K. Dobbins under 66.5 rushing plus receiving yards, plus 379 at FanDuel Sportsbook. Not the most aggressive we've gone with our SGPs here on the show, but I do feel good about all 3 of those bets individually. If you want to put the Herbert one in there, you definitely can because that works pretty well with a lot of these aspects too, but I do think that's a pretty fun one. Again, Ravens -2.5, Henry 100 plus rushing yards, J.K. Dobbins under 66.5 rushing plus receiving yards, my 3-leg same game parlay for Monday Night Football. That is all that we have here for today on Covering the Spread. Again, big week here on the YouTube page because we've got 4 more shows coming up, 10 a.m. for the betting shows, both tomorrow and Wednesday, 3 p.m. on Tuesday for the DFS show for Thanksgiving, 2 p.m. Eastern. I'm going to get those mixed up all week. 2 p.m. Eastern on Wednesday for the main slate DFS show. Again, just subscribe to get those as we go live each and every weekday here on the brand new FanDuel Football Betting YouTube page. You can also find me on X at JimSannes. I am on Blue Sky at JimSannes as well. You can find FanDuel Research on Twitter at FanDuel Research. Big thank you to our YouTube producer, Justin Lane, for his work on the video side of things. Thank you, Justin, as always. And thanks to all of you for tuning in. Good luck to you on Monday Night Football. We'll talk to you tomorrow to get you set for the 3-game Thanksgiving slate, talking best bets and player props, 10 a.m. Eastern. This has been Covering the Spread, a FanDuel Research podcast.